Hey, what is going on, everybody? Welcome to Super Lunch Bros Podcast, episode number 56. I am Brendan. And today we're just going to be going over predictions for fight night this weekend. Reyes versus Prochazka. Prochazka. It's one of those names that I don't know if I'm ever going to get right, no matter how many times I hear it. It's it's going to be an interesting fight. At light heavyweight, Reyes obviously coming off the big loss to Jan when he had a chance to get the vacant belt left by John Jones. And Pochazka coming off that, I think he had that crazy fight, if I'm not mistaken. And I remember like him getting cracked early as well and leaving himself open for a lot of shots. So if he doesn't bite on a lot of Reyes' feints, similar to how Jan didn't, Reyes could be in for a really long night. I don't know if we ever saw. I don't know if peak Reyes was John Jones, where the best he's going to perform is when he's out there against, top tier, top caliber, one of the best of all time, and he rises to the occasion, gets to where he hangs in there and wins on some people's scorecards against the reigning champ and dethrones him. Was that a depleted John Jones? Is that an aged out John Jones? Unmotivated John Jones? Whatever. Is it just a good matchup for Reyes? Able to basically do the MMA version of dinking and dunking and try to outpoint him because you don't really knock John Jones out. I don't know. This is a good test. The fight against Jones gave us a sense of what Reyes is capable of, and the fight with Jan just adds a whole bunch of questions. And we saw he did have that close fight with No Time. He had that fight with him, and that fight went. It went his way in the end, but I don't believe he actually got that. They got that win, and like Uzdemir, yeah, is his name, Volkan Uzdemir. So I don't believe he got that win. I think Volkan did. But is Reyes a good competitor at light heavyweight? Absolutely. Is light heavyweight a little thinner than it? Some of the other, let's just say compared to some of the other lighter divisions. Also, of course it is. We've talked about this before. Light heavyweight is where a lot of athletes are not going to be choosing to get punched in the face for a living anymore because the money isn't there. These guys who are, the sweet spot seems to be over 6 foot, and anywhere from 5'11", 5'10" being the shorter guys, up until obviously you can be like 6'4", 6'5" like John Jones. That seems to be the sweet spot there, and that just happens to be a sweet spot for a lot of sports. American football, basketball being in the NBA, where your average player is like 6'2", 6'3". So that would be on the shorter side for some of those guys. But baseball, that's a common height for baseball, is around 6 foot. A little over 6 foot. And then the thing is, your average American male sits at about 5'10", 5'11", right? And worldwide, it's about the same. It's shorter in some Asian countries and taller in some European countries. And in African countries, it's different as well. Some of them are a lot taller. Some of them are shorter, depending on the population that you're sampling. But anyway, so especially in the United States, which is I'm really using as the biggest sample size, that's where a lot of athletes tend to find other sports that are more lucrative for them. So, we're not getting, generally speaking, this isn't me criticizing each individual athlete, but look at Dominic Reyes. Like, he couldn't make it as a professional baseball player, so he ended up coming over to the UFC. We have a couple fighters who were NFL players for a season or two, or they were college football players, and then they didn't make it to the NFL, so they came over. We had former basketball players. We've had, and a lot of these guys are wrestlers that end up making it to these the big show here in MMA, and that's because, like we've talked before, a lot of these wrestlers don't have an outlet. There's no professional outlet for wrestling right now that is as lucrative as going into fighting. So a lot of them are training on different aspects of martial arts, and they end up in MMA. So all that to get around to, is the division as strong as the other divisions in the UFC? Absolutely not. Do I think Dominic Reyes is very good? Yes. I think if he stays disciplined and he's a little bit more patient, and stays keen on his defense this time, especially being the main event, so it's 5 rounds, I think he can get this done against a more reckless Jiri. That being said, he could also get caught. So it'll be interesting to see over 5 rounds if Reyes can keep the pace up. And I mean, I'm excited for this fight because this very well could be, a title contention fight. It's probably not going to be for Reyes based off of how that first fight went with Jan. Not a lot of questions after that one. Plus, we got Alexander Rakic waiting in the wings, looking for a title shot as well. So if Dominic Reyes, being ranked number 3, knocks Jiri out in impressive fashion, maybe he could swing it and get a new fight, another fight versus Jan, but I doubt it. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a good chance that Dominic can get this done, but I don't know if we've seen who he is as a fighter yet. So we'll have to go back. We have to go back after this fight, and then I think this fight will give us a really good idea of where he sits in the division and possibly in light heavyweight history. If he comes out here and smokes this guy, and then smokes whoever they put out in front of him, and then just has a tough time with Jan, we could be getting into a DC John Jones type of deal. But it's a little early for that. Let's see how he handles this situation, see how we move forward. Yeah, Pochazka beat he knocked out Ozdemir in that crazy one where Ozdemir rocked him. Yes. Okay. Ozdemir, sorry, not Ozdemir. All right. Co-main event. Giga Chikadze versus Cub Swanson. I don't care. I'm never gonna root against Cub Swanson. I don't care. I love him as a fighter. I love him as a person. I think he's one of the most interesting fighters inside the octagon. I think he's just a fun guy, both in and out. He's a really lighthearted dude who's got a good sense of humor. It doesn't take anything too seriously, except when he needs to. Like his career, obviously. It's an all-around good dude, and I love his story. I love the fact that the last fight he was getting dominated by a bigger, heavier guy that the commentators couldn't shut up about the size difference. Like, look how big this guy is, and man, when Cub's hitting him, it's not doing anything. And then he catches him at the end of the round, puts him on Queer Street, and then in the middle of the next round, ends up putting him out. So, I'm rooting for Cub. I hope he gets a big knockout win. I love watching him fight, man. He's so much fun. All right, we got Ian Cutelaba versus Dustin Jacoby. Another light heavyweight fight. Ian Cutelaba is a crazy dude with a lot of power. But from what I've seen, unless he does something drastic, I don't think he's pushing the upper tier, the upper echelon of the division. I don't remember too much about Dustin. I'd have to go back and watch his fights. This one's not my most exciting preview here. I mean, there's lots of good, like Sean Strickland versus Krzysztof Jotko. That's a great fight at middleweight. It's going to be probably a banger and fun to watch. This card's going to be really fun. Ian Cutelaba swings like crazy. Dustin Jacoby's going to have to avoid a lot of that stuff to get a win here. Ian Cutelaba could gas himself out like he has and, come in the second round and we can get a sloppy light heavyweight fight. But for what it's worth, I think we're going to have fun for at least, 3 to 5 minutes, maybe even the full 15. Merab Dvalishvili fighting Cody Stamann. So Merab obviously has that one BS loss where he was submitted when the fight was already over. I will never understand that decision. I don't care how many times people explain it to me. if you end the fight, if the bell rings and you are slamming your feet on the ground, the fight is officially over. I don't care if I can't stand up or if I'm passed out on the ground. Like, none of that shit matters. The fight is over. So clearly whatever happened that got me to that point happened after the fight. Therefore, it doesn't count. In between rounds, if you punch somebody, that punch doesn't count. In fact, it's a foul. After the fight, if I were to punch somebody, that does not count. Therefore, if I am submitted after the fight is over, it does not count. And, like, technically they can say, like, oh, you're not defending yourself. Well, then why don't, if in any submission you're just sitting there waiting, why don't you call the fight off? It's a stupid ruling, and because there's no oversight with these commissions, there's no way to overturn it, and I think it's bullshit. But Rob is like high activity, really loud kind of guy getting in there, and he's going to have his hands full with Stamen. Merab's an excellent wrestler. He just goes for it, man. Coming out of that Longo Serra camp, he's a fun guy to watch. Really high energy, and I think at bantamweight he has a tough road ahead of him if he's going to try and crack the top 10 here, but it's possible. And then, I mean, they're 12-13 going into this fight. Merab's 12. So, the winner of this very well could jump over Jimmy Rivera and Rafael Assunção, depending on, the outcome. If it's a long, drawn-out 3-round decision, maybe there's not a lot of movement here. Maybe one moves up one. Maybe the other one moves down one. But, yeah. I mean, I'm excited for Merab. I think he's an excellent fighter. And he hasn't shown me that he's gotten, like, how do I put this? He's not blowing the doors off of everybody who gets in there. So, like, and he's also not talking a lot of shit. So he's not the talk of the division. He's not the talk of the UFC. But he's one of those guys who's really hardworking, has a crazy good gas tank, and he's coming from an excellent camp, and he's very disciplined. So he can always put it together, and I think given the age of some of these guys and the landscape of the bantamweight division, Cody Garbrandt being ranked 4, Jose Aldo being ranked 5, those two guys could disappear at any moment. Cody, for different reasons. Marlon Moraes kind of on the downslide. Frankie Edgar, who's 1,000 years old. I love Frankie Edgar, don't get me wrong, and also they're from the same camp. No, they're not. He's from... oh my goodness. Not Sarah Longo. Where is it? No, I don't. Oh my goodness. The guy who owns the pizza store. Anyway, yeah, I think there's a good chance that he basically ages out or ages into the top 10 pretty easily. If he just continues to grind, if he gets a loss win, what an idiot. No, if he gets a loss here or there against some of the top tier opponents or upper echelon fighters, it's not the worst thing in the world. I think he has plenty of time with the way that the top 10 looks, and I think he can definitely make it up there. Mark Henry, that's who he trains with. Frankie Edgar does. I'm an idiot. Poliana Botelho versus Luana Carolina. That's a flyweight fight. Nothing gets me jazzed up about flyweights. Like, you're going to have to do something. Like, that's the thing. It doesn't happen until it happens. That's like, somebody's got to make a statement. Somebody's got to make themselves known. Somebody has to put themselves ahead of everyone else in the division. They have to have a standout performance and be just like a crazy fighter, to get noticed in a division dominated by, one of, if not the best women fighters of all time. Randa Marcos, who is officially under 500 in her career fighting in the UFC. You're not going to see that a lot. I mean, especially in the men's division. This is what I'm talking about when we bring up, this is not Randa Marcos fighting Luana Pinheiro. So this is not an indictment on the women competing, nor is it an indictment on the UFC or anybody in particular. It's just the state of women's MMA. It doesn't have the depth that male MMA does right now. It just doesn't. It's not that there aren't excellent fighters out there or at the, the top 5 or, like I said, this is a strawweight fight. Strawweight, like Randa Marcos is a really good fighter. Don't get me wrong. But the fact that she's still in the UFC after losing as much as she has and being an under 500 fighter, like you wouldn't see that from any male competitor in the UFC unless they had a crazy name attached to them, or maybe they left and then came back and worked their way back, something like that. It'd be very rare to see, and there's just a large discrepancy when it comes to the talent within the divisions themselves. So, the UFC's men divisions have been around for so long where we've really weeded out, certain techniques, certain fighting styles. Some techniques just don't work in MMA anymore, unless it's in women's MMA, like the headlock toss. Male fighters don't do that anymore. I haven't seen that done in a fight in forever in a men's fight in any men's division. I mean, maybe it's happened once or twice, but if you watch strictly women's MMA, you will see it. I don't know, 1 out of every 4 fights, and maybe that's too high. Maybe it's 1 out of 10 fights. That means 10% of the time you're seeing a head and arm toss. Like, you don't see that because it's bad. Like, it's bad technique because your back can get taken, right? If they loop their arm around, like as you have them in a headlock, and if they loop their arm around your back and then put their legs over you, once you let go of that headlock, they have your back. So the fact that more women don't defend against that, or the fact that women continue to use it even though it gets reversed quite a bit, it's just one of those things where you can see that the evolution is still taking place. And obviously where we are now compared to where we were, 5, 6, 10 years ago, whatever, in women's MMA, it's very clear and it's obviously better. But given another 20 years of advancement, I think we're going to see a completely different sport where the women's divisions are going to be similar to where the men's divisions are now. No telling where the men's division are. Like, maybe advancement slows down at a certain point, and then we just get this ebb and flow, like kind of like we've seen for the past 5 years, where a certain breed of fighter is dominating in the sport, or a certain technique is dominating the sport, is very prevalent, and then it starts to fade away as people learn to defend it, and then another thing takes over, and it could be cyclical, like where wrestlers dominated early UFC, or grapplers did, and then the strikers came around, Muay Thai was very popular, and then boxing worked its way in a little bit, and then, you had the karate craze. It's, I think we have a really good balance now in men's MMA, and you still have a couple standouts. The two that come to my mind are Stephen Thompson and Damian Maia. Damian Maia being one of the best grapplers, best jiu-jitsu artists ever to compete in the UFC. And then you got Stephen Thompson, who's one of the best strikers ever, especially like one of the most unique strikers to be to ever step foot in the octagon. You've got Israel Adesanya being a kickboxer with a very unique striking style. And like, obviously you still have wrestlers competing at the highest level and can win on any given night. This fight, I don't know if Randa gets cut if she loses this. She is the classic definition of a gatekeeper, where if you can't beat Randa Marcos, you're not making it to the top 5. You're not making it in the top, probably not even the top 10 in the strawweight division. If you can beat her convincingly and you make short work of Randa Marcos, she's a good wrestler. Her strikes aren't there. She just doesn't have a complete MMA game, and I don't know how much more she's going to be improving, and I haven't seen a lot of improvement over her past 5 or 6 fights. That shows me she's on like an upward trajectory towards I was going to say greatness, but she's already great. She made it to the UFC and she's done really well and she's beat some of the best in the division. She's not a bad fighter. It's just she has a lot of clear holes in her game, and if you can exploit them effectively over a 3-round fight and distance yourself from her, it means you're probably gonna you could probably challenge in the top 5, top 10 for sure. See, featherweight, you got Gabriel Benitez fighting Jonathan Pierce. Yeah, nothing about that one. Kai Kamaka, TJ Brown, Loma, Luke Bunmi versus Sam Hughes. Another strawweight fight. Andreas, Luke Sanders. Those ones I'll cover. Oh, Luke Sanders. Why do I know that guy? Is that the nuts dude? Is that the guy who's crazy? It might be. It's Felipe Colares. Cool. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So the main event being the main event and co-main event. 2 standouts on the card. A couple other interesting fights on this main card. The prelims are a little thin, but hey, it's a fight night. What you gonna do? It's at the UFC Apex, so we're back to Vegas. Means I don't think they're letting fans in. So going back to how it's been for the past year. Yeah, I mean, to speak to that, I wonder how much that's actually affecting the fighters. Now that we've seen it for long enough, like going back to having fans there, is that going to have an adverse effect? Did adapting to learning how to fight while not being able to hear your coaches again? I mean, Anthony Smith spoke to that, where he said when he fought for the first time with no fans against Glover, his coaches just kept yelling at him, and he just kept going and going and going. He just gassed himself out. That's when Glover started knocking his teeth out. I don't know. I don't hate the silence without the fans. And honestly, I know people were excited to have fans there. I think I am more excited just to have the commentary team sitting next to each other. I think there's a different dynamic. Also, I like that when they go into the octagon and speak to the fighter face to face. I think that it's a different dynamic. It feels more personal when you're able to get in there. I understand. I'm not saying they should have been doing that. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, like, I appreciate when the commentary team is next to each other, because you get moments like we had last week with Joe, like, going, ah, like doing that stuff, and John Anik, pushing forward, like holding his headset, like just the interesting back and forth. I think it's been great both ways, but I enjoy when they're together more. Also, I think one of the reasons why the crowd helps the broadcast, it's not something I thought about till right now, is it breaks up the silence. Because if you think about it, if there's ever downtime in a fight, you'll hear booing from the crowd, or you'll hear the woos, like the Ric Flair bullshit, or you're gonna die when you're in Brazil. Which, like, I understand that people don't like the woos. This is fine. Like, who cares? I mean, I'm not in love with it. I don't care about it. It's just a part of the crowd thing. It's the same thing as you're going to die when you're in Brazil. I'm like, oh, well, that's just something that they do in their sporting events. Okay. I mean, they have to, like, these traditions have to start sometime. If the tradition is people wooing in the crowd, then so be it. Like, you guys sound like such a bunch of old fogies. And I don't mean that you can't dislike it. Of course you can. Like, that's fine. Hate on it. I don't care. I don't like it. I'm not, like I said, I'm not in love with it. I just don't give a shit. It doesn't mean anything to me. I think it's more offensive to scream, "You're going to die," but I understand that that's a part of their culture, and that's just something that they say at soccer events, and that's something that they say, at other sporting events when they're there, and it's like a crowd chant, and it brings the people together. Whatever. I don't care. It's like when they're in the, in the U.S. and people are shouting USA when it's an international fight. It's, traditions have to start somewhere. And if the tradition is people wooing in the crowd, Like they were screaming, "Fuck Jake Paul" in UFC 261. I mean, I don't care. What I'm saying is, like, I think that it gives the commentary team a little bit to talk about, and it also breaks up the silence, and it makes them. I don't know if it does it actively, but for me, it would make me feel less worried about not saying anything and just leaving it quiet. You know, that's one thing I noticed when I was watching the PFL, which I know. Honestly, I have not watched enough of it. I've watched the highlights more than sitting down and watching the fights as a whole. This last event I did. I watched it as a whole, but usually for the PFL, I have not been doing that. I've just been watching the highlights. And one of the things I noticed is the commentary team, they just don't have like the ebb and flow, the smoothness that you're used to with the commentary team in the UFC and even Bellator. You've got the play-by-play guy just who will not stop talking. And, like, this is coming from me, someone who never shuts up. And this guy just would not stop. He's like, oh, he's stepping right. He's stepping left. He's moving his right foot forward. There's a low kick. Oh, he defended that. Oh, here's a high kick. Hey, oh, here's a hook. Here's a left hook. Here's a right hook. Oh, he's going for a takedown. It's like, dude, we can see what he's doing. Please stop. Like, if you want to comment on like a missed shot or maybe a big technique that missed, or when they're on the ground especially, that's what, and like Joe might catch a lot of flack for saying random stuff, and I don't like everything that he does, but one of the things that I love about him is, when he does technique breakdown on the ground, especially for people who don't understand what's going on, or like that's Dominic Cruz. I'll defend him as the best. Sorry, I'll say he's the best. I said it last week or a couple weeks ago. I think he's the best in the business right now. I really do. I think his expertise, the way he's disassociated from the fight emotionally, but can still, have a laugh or be serious when he needs to. And he plays really well with others. He plays off of his fellow commentary team really well. I'm a huge fan of his. I don't get any of that from the PFL, commentary. The Bellator has gotten there. It's gotten a lot better. Obviously, Goldie's gone from there. I never hated him. I understand some people didn't like the way he commentated. I felt like he just had like a very distinct voice. And the Rogan Goldberg team, it was just, I don't know. It's just something. There's something special about it. I don't think they were the best team compared to like what we have now. I just think there's something very special about his voice when it comes to the UFC. It's just like you hear his voice and you think UFC, and it's hard to disassociate. All right. That's those fights. Let's go over a little bit of UFC news here. All right, so one of my most looked forward to anticipated fights, Corey Sandhagen versus TJ Dillashaw, is off for right now. They're going to have to reschedule. TJ has a really nasty cut right above his eye, underneath his eyebrow. He got during sparring from a headbutt. I'm really excited for that fight. I really like TJ Dillashaw. I understand why people don't like him. It's fine. I think what he did compared to what Anderson Silva did and John Jones did, like, I don't understand why there's this distaste or instant hate for TJ versus those other guys or other people who have popped, right? Because every single one of them has just deny. And every one of them, they just lie about it. Which, fine, I'm not telling them not to do it. I mean, their lawyers probably said, like, dude, don't say a damn word. Don't say anything. Never admit guilt. This isn't going to go any better if you tell the truth. I mean, fine, I don't care. I mean, I don't give a shit. You do what you got to do. I just mean, why does everybody hate on TJ for doing that? And then coming out and explaining not only that he did it, but why he did it. That it wasn't his wife. I forget. There's something in his blood that was super low, and in order to get it back up to normal levels, he had to take. I don't know if it was. I don't think it was his red blood cell count. There's a level that was really low, and he couldn't train because he was cutting so much weight and he was draining his body. You know, was it cheating under the rules? Absolutely. Should he have done it? No, I'm not condoning breaking the rules that everybody agreed to follow when they signed up to fight in the UFC. It's just, if you get caught, you get caught, right? I can point to a bunch of fighters in the UFC who have not been caught, who are clearly on shit. Like, you guys, like, if you want to stay blind to it and just be like, use plausible deniability when it comes to them, that's fine. But when someone comes out and admits what they're doing, don't shit on them because of it. Like, you're turning a blind eye or pleading ignorance to the fact of, these other guys who are clearly using. And then you'll just, when someone comes out and tells the truth about what's going on, you instantly demonize them. But then on the other hand, you have fighters who come out and just lie about what they did openly after getting caught, and then they all get a pass because everybody forgets about it. I think part of it is TJ hasn't fought recently. He hasn't come out and fought yet. So once he fights, hopefully that stink kind of goes away. I've said this, I've been very open about it. I don't give a shit if people do stuff. I don't think it provides the advantage that people think it does. Obviously, there's an advantage, and it's measurable. Okay, I'm not saying that it doesn't do anything. If it didn't do anything, people wouldn't do it. That's not true. People do a lot of stupid shit that they think is doing stuff, like taking post-workout and intra-workout shakes. So stupid. If you're listening to that and you're just like, what? Just literally look up any peer-reviewed research or just an honest review of any intra-workout stuff or BCAAs, and you're going to find out that they have little to no effectiveness. Like, honestly, none. Little is being generous, or fat burners. I think that's pretty common knowledge now. Fat burners don't fucking work, but people think they do, so they do it, right? So it's not just the placebo effect. It's also just plain stupidity. So I don't want to come out and say, the reason why people do them is because they work, because that's not always the case. But I'll tell you that there is a measurable difference in recovery time, measurable difference in musculoskeletal structure, bone density, those kinds of things. You can go back and you can look up like peer-reviewed research that shows that those things are effective. And it's not necessarily from the sports community. It's from doctors who are dealing with patients who've been injured, right? Because that's where testosterone is legal and where it's allowed to be used to help someone get better. But when you're already better, you're not allowed to use it. That makes no sense to me. Like, it really doesn't. Like, people are given entire bottles of antidepressants. People are given, that's a stupid example. I shouldn't have said that one. You can go buy an entire bottle of Tylenol or ibuprofen, if you took the entire bottle, you would die. And if you're fine, it can help you a little bit. But the point is, like, the stuff is there for you to take to help you get better. Like, I'm okay with people doing that. There's just, when you do those things, it doesn't change who you are to the point where you instantly jump ahead of all of your opponents. You have to put in the work. Those things allow you, that's what they do. They allow you to do more work. I think the example is a cup. Like, you take a cup, let's say it's 20 ounces, just a random number. And the amount of work you can do is 20 ounces of work. So if you pour water in it, any more work you do, it overflows. You can't hold on to it. So that's when you get injuries, or, you don't sleep well, and, like, you don't have time, that kind of stuff. You don't recover. So the amount of work you can do later is diminished. Well, doing any sort of performance enhancing stuff just increases the volume of that cup or empties it faster. Right? So if the amount of work you do in a day is that liquid, maybe it's drained faster overnight. So it's like completely empty in the morning versus only being half empty or half full. So there's some hardliners out there who are like, no cheating in sports. How dare you? It's cheating, cheating, cheating. Bad, bad, bad. Drugs are bad. Fine. I'm not here to change your mind, and you're more than welcome, but please apply that evenly to all the athletes when you go to make comments about it or in your general attitude towards that person. Okay. So just be consistent with your message. And then on the other side of it, TJ Dillashaw was the best bantamweight in the world. He was. I don't care what you guys say, what anybody says. Like, he was the champ. I mean, he beat the previous pound for pound champ. He was basically the pound for pound champ. It was going between him and his teammate Jose Aldo, hand and brow. And beat him twice. And beat Joe Soto. Didn't lose to Dominic Cruz. I'm going to tell you that much. If I was taken from him. Won that. Knocked Cody Garbrandt out twice. Okay? I don't want to hear it. I really don't. Like, anybody who says that he did all this stuff, then either A, your training isn't good enough to beat him, or B, you're not willing to do what he's doing to get the win. Either way, it's all a gamble, Working out 2 times a day, it's a gamble. You're gambling that your body's going to hold up. When you take stuff, you're gambling that you're not going to get caught. Or if you're just taking protein, it's a gamble. You're gambling that it's not going to have any banned substances in it. I think there's protections in place for some of those things, but for some of them it's not. So you're gambling with that as well. Anyway. All right. What else is going on? I saw that Conor McGregor ended up donating to the Boys and Girls Club in Louisiana and not Dustin Poirier's donation, the Good Fight Foundation. I don't have a problem with that. I think it's funny. It's like, it's probably the most generous fuck you ever. Like, if you're going to burn a guy by donating money to needy children, needy sounds so bad. Those in need sounds better. Children in need. Who's losing in that? We all win. Okay? It's not a zero-sum game where, like, those children get stuff, therefore the other children don't. No, these children now have something they didn't have, right? They have an opportunity to provide more for these children, at the Boys and Girls Club. And then we win because we get some fun news in the story. Poirier's name gets thrown back out there. McGregor wins because he looks like a good guy now. And he's being, like, people think it's, like, shitty for him to not do that with Dustin Poirier's. Like, I think it's all good. Who gets hurt in this situation? Like, you can say the Good Fight Foundation, but that has gotten a ton of publicity from this. I'm sure they've gotten a lot of donations they wouldn't have got. Maybe it's not $500,000 worth of donation, but they've got a lot of donations, I'm sure, because of this. And that's awesome. And he's very happy that the Good Fight Foundation is very happy. Like, he made a statement saying, like, I'm glad, these children are getting help. So it's all in good fun. Yeah, there's some other stuff in the news. Donald Cerrone versus oh my goodness, what is wrong with me? Diego Sanchez, that's who. Diego Sanchez is out of the fight for UFC Vegas 26. That's on the same card, I think, as the Dillashaw one. So they're looking for an opponent for Cowboy. So, Cowboy. I'm pretty sure if they told him, like, hey, Ngannou needs an opponent, you in? Pretty sure he'd say yes. He's nuts, dude. So, yeah, that's it. I don't want to get into that news. I don't really want to get into other stuff. I think Khamzat Chimaev versus Nick Diaz would have been a fun fight. I think anything for Nick Diaz at this point would be fun. Yeah, John Jones parted ways, or left his promotional team. So, I mean, I don't really care. He says it wasn't about the negotiations where he didn't get the Ngannou fight, but it's a weird timing for that. So even if it wasn't, who cares? I hope nothing but the best for all the fighters in the UFC and MMA, and I hope nothing but the best for him. I don't need him to be a better person. Okay, I like when he's the asshole. I like disliking him and hating him, but at this point, I can't just hate John Jones. He's not the bad guy. He's a misguided person with clear psychological issues that needs help. And I'm not gonna sit here and root for that person's demise. Yeah, I mean, I used to want to see him lose. Now I don't care. I just want to see good fights with him, and I hope he gets the help that he needs. And I don't know if he has. No news is good news with him. So we haven't heard anything outside of, this. But who gives a shit? So you're leaving your management team. Who cares? Whatever. It doesn't mean anything. That's not necessarily a bad thing for him. I haven't heard anything about him doing anything illegal or getting caught doing anything lately, and that's awesome. Like I said, no news is good news, and maybe this is the change. It's hard to prove. It's hard to prove a negative. Because you can always say well, it hasn't happened yet. But it hasn't happened. So maybe he is turning things around. Hopefully he's focused on getting ready for heavyweight. I've seen pictures of him. I've seen him work out. He's looking very heavy. He said he wants to go in there as big as Ngannou. I don't think that matters for him as much as speed and technique does, and game plan especially. So we'll see what happens with him. But I'm hoping that whoever he picks as his new management team straightens him out a little bit, both inside and out of the octagon. I really hope that they can work together to get more stuff done in a productive way with the UFC, or hey, maybe even part ways. Because it's been a long time since we've seen him fight, and a guy of his caliber should be racking up wins on his record and not arguments with his boss on Twitter. That's where I'm at with him. I want to see him inside the octagon, not outside. I don't care what you do with your life as long as you're not hurting anybody around you, especially your family. If you're getting in arguments with people or getting fights inside the gym, so be it. I don't give a shit. That's gonna happen. It's fighting. These guys are all they're all fighters. This shit's gonna happen sometimes. I'm just hoping that he gets it together. Yeah, Weidman, I feel so bad. I still can't get over it. What's crazy is I had multiple people who don't watch MMA regularly, especially, when it comes to no-name fighters or fighters who are only popular within the UFC. And I had multiple people ask me hey, how'd that guy's leg break? They didn't even know his name. They just knew his leg broke. So, I thought about it a lot this week, and it just made me even more upset. I cannot believe how bad your luck has to be to have a leg break like that. I mean, Tony Ferguson might have the worst luck when it comes to that kind of stuff, with his knee ripping apart, tripping on his camera cables while doing media obligations, and then getting stripped of the belt. That's not luck. That's just the UFC being assholes. That has nothing to do with luck. But anyway, all right. I think that's pretty much it. If you made it this far, you're awesome. Listen to some weird dude sitting in his stupid loft, bitching and moaning about the UFC. Oh, you know what? No, there is a PFL fight. Oh yeah. Good luck to Rory McDonald. I hope he can get it done. I'm really rooting for him in the PFL. I think he's going to be. I I don't know if this version of Rory is still one of the best welterweights in the world, but there's a good chance that he is. We're talking about a guy who demolished Tyron Woodley when Tyron Woodley was. I don't know if that was before Duke Rufus, but he demolished Tyron Woodley, and he should have got the title. Like again, but he fought Robbie and just like in one of the best fights ever, in one of my favorite fights ever, and like he was up on the judges' scorecards, and he could have won that fight if he just was if his nose was able to handle it. It's just Robbie broke it, man. Anyway, so that's coming up tomorrow or 2 days from now. So anyway, yeah, all the best to everybody listening. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure you like and subscribe. Don't forget, go back to the library. I've got a lot of episodes up now. If you ever want to look back and see like our reactions to things, or if you want to go back and see the stuff that isn't necessarily time dependent, make sure you comment. Let me know what you like, what you don't like, any things you want to hear. But yeah, I really appreciate y'all. Hope you guys have an awesome day.